Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving headfirst into the world of logo design. But we're not just talking fonts and colors, we're going deeper, exploring the ethical side of crafting a brand's visual identity.
It's surprising how many ethical dilemmas pop up in logo design. It's more than just aesthetics. It's responsibility, cultural awareness, even a bit of philosophy.
Our listener wants to peek behind the curtain of this creative process. They sent in this article, Logo Design Ethics, How to Avoid Ethical Violations, by Stuart Crawford, a creative director. So let's unpack this. Crawford calls a logo a promise between the brand and the consumer. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a powerful statement. It shows a logo is more than just a visual. It carries meaning, builds trust, communicates brand values. When done well, it resonates with the consumer, like a visual handshake almost. But it also brings in what Crawford calls the ethical tightrope.
Right, that balancing act between originality and respecting other designers. He even says finding something truly original is like finding a unicorn in your backyard.
Exactly. It highlights the challenge for every designer creating something unique in a world full of images. That pressure to stand out can lead to unintentional borrowing or even plagiarism. That's where things get ethically tricky.
How do designers navigate that? The article mentions avoiding copycat designs, but how do you define that line between inspiration and imitation?
That's the million-dollar question. Crawford emphasizes thorough research. It's not just about avoiding identical logos. It's about understanding the design landscape, seeing common themes, then pushing past them.
So being aware but not stifled.
Absolutely. Transforming inspiration into innovation. Crawford talks about the evolution of tech company logos. Think about the early internet. How many logos used globes, pixels, or those ES with a swoosh?
Oh, yeah. Every other tech company seemed to have some variation of those.
Exactly. Those elements weren't bad in themselves. But as the industry grew, designers had to find new ways to represent technology visually. The best designs became more abstract, more conceptual.
So it's more than just avoiding copying, it's understanding the context of your choices.
Precisely. Beyond that, Crawford stresses legal advice, especially with trademarks. It can get very complex.
So legal advice is crucial, even early on.
Absolutely. Better safe than sorry. Respecting intellectual property isn't just about avoiding lawsuits. It's about upholding the integrity of the design profession. Ripping someone off devalues everyone's creativity.
It's like plagiarism anywhere else, you're undermining the effort and originality. Speaking of respecting others, Crawford also talks about cultural sensitivity in logo design. That's something I admit I hadn't thought about much before reading this. What kind of cultural things do logo designers need to watch out for?
It's really interesting because symbols and colors, they can mean such different things in different cultures. Something that seems totally harmless in one place could be really offensive somewhere else.
Have there been any real-world examples of this happening?
Oh, tons. One that comes to mind is using animals in logos. Like an owl usually means wisdom and knowledge in Western cultures. But in some parts of Africa, it's connected to witchcraft or bad luck. If a brand goes into a new market without understanding that, they could turn off potential customers right away.
That's a perfect example. It shows how important research and sensitivity are.
And it's not just about avoiding those mistakes. Crawford says culturally sensitive design can actually build trust with different groups of people. When it's done well, it shows you respect their values and understand where they're coming from.
So you're not just avoiding bad stuff, you're aiming for a positive connection.
Exactly. Going beyond awareness to actual sensitivity. Recognizing that your design choices have consequences and taking responsibility for them.
This responsibility thing makes me think of something else Crawford mentions, this whole debate about spec work. Can you explain what that is for people who might not know?
Sure. Spec work is basically when a client wants designs from a bunch of designers up front. They only pay if they actually use one of the designs.
So it's like a competition, only one person wins and gets paid.
Exactly. And Crawford's really against it. He thinks it's taking advantage of designers and really unethical. It makes design seem like a commodity instead of a skilled profession. Like anyone can just make logos for free and hope for the best.
And it puts designers in a tough spot, especially new designers.
Absolutely. They might feel like they have to do spec work to get noticed, even if it means working for free. But then they burn out, get frustrated, feel like they're being used.
So what's the alternative? How do we move away from spec work and make the design industry more fair and sustainable?
Crawford says it starts with teaching clients about how valuable good design is and how important fair pay is. He says designers need to be willing to walk away if a client wants spec work and focus on building relationships with clients who actually value their skills.
It's about changing the power dynamic. showing that designers deserve to be paid for what they can do.
Exactly. And part of that is being upfront about your prices, charging what you're worth. Crawford says if you charge too little, it hurts you and it hurts the whole industry. Everyone ends up racing to the bottom and nobody wins.
It's about having standards for yourself and for everyone else in the field.
Right. Ethical design isn't just avoiding bad things. It's creating a system that's fair and sustainable for everyone.
And that includes the environmental impact of our designs,
Yeah.
right? Crawford talks about that too, right? He does. It's not something you think about every day. But logos do have an impact, both environmentally and digitally. What does that even mean when we're talking about logo design?
Well, environmentally, it's about the logo's life cycle. How's it made? What's it printed on? How much waste is created? Those are things designers are thinking about more and more, especially as brands focus on sustainability.
So making smart choices about materials and printing. What about the digital footprint? That sounds like something from a sci-fi movie.
It's more about understanding that even digital things have real-world consequences. A big, complicated logo might look amazing on a billboard, but it could slow down a website. And these days, a few extra seconds can make people lose interest.
Tell me about it. I've left so many online shopping carts because a website took too long.
Exactly. And it's not just about speed. Crawford says to design logos that are accessible to everyone, including people with visual impairments, like having enough color contrast or using fonts that screen readers can handle.
That's important. It's about realizing design choices affect more than just how things look.
Exactly.
They affect inclusivity and the whole user experience.
Right. And speaking of pushing boundaries, Crawford talks about the elephant in the room, artificial intelligence and how it's changing the design world.
AI design tools are everywhere now. Is that something designers should be worried about ethically?
It's a good question. Crawford says AI can be really helpful for generating ideas and making certain parts of the process faster, but you have to use it responsibly.
What does that look like in reality?
First, remember AI has limitations. Algorithms can look at tons of data and create designs that look great, but they don't understand things like cultural context, brand identity, or human emotion. Those are things human designers bring to the table.
So use AI as a tool, not a replacement.
Exactly. Crawford sees a future where designers and AI work together, each using their strengths to make designs that are both new and ethical.
That's an interesting way to look at it. It sounds like the main takeaway is that ethical design is an ongoing conversation. It keeps changing as technology and culture change.
Absolutely. And everyone's part of that conversation, designers, clients, even consumers. We all have a role in making the design landscape more ethical.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. We've talked about originality, cultural sensitivity, the environmental impact of design, even AI. If you had to pick one thing you want our listener to remember, what would it be?
It's a tough one. But I think it's that ethical design isn't about following a bunch of rules. It's about thinking carefully about every decision you make, being responsible and informed.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave our listener with something to think about. Crawford says sometimes the most ethical thing a designer can do is walk away. Walk away from a project that goes against their values. So we ask you, what are your ethical deal breakers? What would make you question the ethics of a logo or a brand as a designer or even as a consumer? Until next time, keep asking those tough questions. And remember, there's always more to discover beneath the surface